Thanks for listening to Live Forever Young Radio. The lymphatic system is one of the body's most important detoxification systems and moves almost 17 liters of waste fluid every day. Today, Bob and Rollie take a closer look at the lymphatic system and how it works with your body's circulatory system to cleanse and detoxify. They discuss the importance of manual lymphatic drainage and how it is necessary in order to keep your body's circulatory system performing at its peak. So sit back, relax, and get ready to live forever young.
Hello everyone, welcome to Live Forever Young Radio. I'm Bob Gilpatrick. I'm here with Rollie Culp. Welcome, Rollie.
Hey, Bobo.
I see you got your Boomers Forever Young shirt on today.
Yep, we're repping the company.
There you go. Looks very good.
Thank you. You're looking good too, my friend, with the blue.
And I just wanted to say congratulations for the first series of the NHL playoffs.
Oh, right.
Which the Lightning won.
Yes,
which
they did.
Means now they've won, 5 playoff series in a row?
Technically, yes, you're right.
And they have to win 4 to win the Stanley Cup.
That's right.
Now they won the first, 4 games to 2.
Yep. They knocked them out. You know who they were playing, right?
Yes, I do. The Florida
Panthers. It was the first Florida on Florida playoff ever. Very fun.
And now we still don't have a winner of the series for the next opponent of the Lightning, but we'll know that by the end of the weekend.
Yep.
And next week we start round 2.
Can't wait.
And probably the following weekend or a little later we'll start round 3.
Yep.
And then the
I
Stanley
know we're
Cup
going all
finals,
the way.
The Lightning will win the Stanley Cup Finals maybe 3-4 weeks from now.
Exactly.
Right?
We just got to keep thinking that way. Put that bubble out there because we'll grab plenty of good energy and throw it to the Lightning.
So one of the things the Lightning players probably could use a little bit of,
for sure,
is some help with their lymph systems.
Yes.
Right. And so today we're going to talk about the lymph system and its importance, what it does, and all like that.
Yeah. Very cool stuff.
So the lymph system is a fluid system, meaning it contains fluid in the vessels, and the fluid moves through these vessels, very similar to the way your blood moves. Okay, the difference is there's no pump for the lymph system.
Really?
Right?
Okay.
And there's also no red blood cells in your lymph system, and which is why it's a clear color.
Okay.
The red blood cells are in your blood.
Right.
And they don't ever move into your lymph system.
Okay.
So that's why your lymph fluid is clear. It runs parallel with your circulatory system of your blood, and it is part of your immune system. So your body is constantly being exposed to bacteria.
Right.
And most of it is in your interstitial fluid, which is outside your blood and also outside of your lymph, is where most bacteria tends to collect. And that bacteria will make its way into your lymph system.
Okay.
Right? Because the fluid, the interstitial fluid, is coming in through these little valves and porous parts of the lymph fluid. The bacteria is coming with it. And so the part that your lymph system plays in your immune defenses, it's primarily filtering out those bacteria by having them neutralized when they get to these nodes, which we'll talk about in a second. And in those nodes, the bacteria gets neutralized and it ends up becoming a waste product.
Okay. So wow, that's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
For something that doesn't have any blood in it. That's a lot. It's doing a lot still. Yeah.
Right? And so it's very critical. The lymph system is very critical because it's constantly filtering these bacteria, right? But it's also collecting up fluid that's being dumped out of your blood. So your blood has plasma, right? And it's got red blood cells and white blood cells, but the plasma is mostly water. And your blood is constantly dumping some of that water out. It's dumping out plasma.
Right.
Okay. And it's now in this neutral area where the fluid collects. And if you didn't have the lymph system to pick it up and move it and eventually bring it back into the blood, then you would have all this swelling in your body, and your water would not be getting moved correctly.
So it's moving a ton of fluid.
Yeah.
I've seen something that says it's something like 17 liters.
Yeah. So the volume of it is about the same amount of your blood. All right. So there's a lot of lymph fluid. Now the lymph fluid is not moving as fast as the blood. The blood is moving quickly because there's a pump. Your heart is pushing it. Right? So it's moving quickly. All right.
Okay.
The lymph system does not have a pump.
No.
So it moves through a few different mechanisms. And one is there are valves. Now there's valves on the inside of the lymph vessel, and there's valves that open up to the outside of the lymph vessel to allow that fluid in.
Okay.
So when the valve on the outside opens up, some fluid comes in, creates pressure, and moves the fluid along. Okay. And also the valves on the inside are opening and closing about every 7 seconds. And that opening and closing, the fluid comes through, closes, blocks it from going backwards.
Okay.
Let's
One-way
keep
valve.
going forward as it pumps, right? But also you have muscle. You have smooth muscle that's actually attached to the outside of the lymph vessels.
Okay.
And when you are moving around, right, and you also have skeletal muscle alongside your big muscles. So when you move around and you exercise, those muscles are moving, and they're helping to move the lymph also.
Okay. So the less you're moving around, the less the lymph will be assisted, especially considering the fact there's no main pump system like the circulatory system. You're relying on a lot of existing type of valve movement and pressure flow that you said once every 7 seconds.
About once every 7 seconds, the valves are opening.
That's not a lot.
Right.
That's actually not a lot.
No, that's why it's moving slowly. Okay.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's slow moving.
Yes.
Okay.
So the lymph is moving slowly, but that's okay because the vessels that it's moving in, which would be like your veins or arteries, eventually come to a place where there's a node.
Right.
And a node is like a little ball.
You mentioned that earlier.
Right. And the lymph comes into the node.
Right.
And inside that node is where the action happens, where the bacteria gets neutralized.
So that's the cleansing point.
Yep. They have B cells and T cells that are inside the node, and they're doing the filtering.
Okay.
And then when it's ready, that fluid leaves the node and moves into the next vessel.
Okay.
And along the way, that vessel is picking up more fluid.
Okay.
Comes to another node, more detoxification. And eventually that fluid, that lymph fluid, makes its way all the way back up to your heart.
Okay.
And the
gets put in
fluid
with the
gets
blood.
dumped back into the blood.
Not
Not all of it. Some of it stays in the lymph and makes another
go around.
turn, go around. But most of it dumps back into the blood, and this is what keeps the homeostasis of the right amount of water and nutrients and stuff in the blood, also in the lymph. So you got this balance of the fluid and the balance of the fluid that's in between, that's in that interstitial fluid.
Wow.
So the lymph, the blood, the interstitial fluid are all interacting together to create this homeostasis, to create this constant cleansing, to create the immune system, the killing of the bacteria.
And then getting it back into the blood system.
Getting it back into the blood so there's enough there's enough water and lymph fluid that now becomes part of the blood system again.
Wow.
Before it also gets released back to the lymph, and it's a symbiotic system.
Yeah. So basically it's like the old show, you can't have one without the other.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a perfect marriage between the immune system, which helps cleanse and keep the circulatory system running.
Right.
That's really cool.
Another thing the lymph system does is it participates as part of the digestive system.
Okay.
And the reason is that when we consume fats, right, normally nutrients get absorbed in your small intestine by these little villi, the little hairs, like called villi,
Yeah.
which is where the nutrients get absorbed. But fats are too big to be absorbed by the villi, so they actually get absorbed into the lymph,
Yeah,
which is also in your small intestine.
Yeah, we talked about the villi on a couple of different shows back, where we talked about how when they get covered over in the plaque too, they don't perform as well.
Yes.
So, this is the same thing we're talking about here. That
And
we're
so
on.
you have lymph in your small intestine also, and you also have blood vessels. So some of the nutrients get absorbed into the blood vessels, and some get absorbed directly into the lymph.
Okay.
Right, because the fat is too big.
Okay.
Right, and eventually it makes its way into your blood, but first has to go into your lymph.
Gotcha.
So that's another thing. So you have the components of your lymph system are
making me
are
feel-
your
Ooh.
vessels and your nodes, and you also have other parts of it like your spleen and your thymus participate in the immune part of the lymph system.
So
as
those
well.
are some organs associated with the old lymph system. Okay, cool.
And so the issues that can happen and one of the reasons you want to pay attention is if your lymph system becomes very sluggish, you're going to be inefficient in cleansing bacteria. And, when people go to the doctor is feeling under their neck,
Right.
behind their ears. They're trying to see if you have lymph vessels that are plugged up and are enlarged, okay? Because that gives them information about the functionality of your lymph system and maybe if you have an infection, that type of thing.
Right. It's funny that you reference when the doctors feel here, which is true. I've talked to some people, and a lot of people think that's one of the only places where they actually have lymph nodes is up here, because that's whenever the doctor says, I'm just checking your glands. I've talked to a few people who don't realize how truly many lymph nodes there are throughout, like under the armpits, down here in the thigh and in the inner thigh area.
All throughout your body.
It's crazy. And so, like, a lot of people, and behind your knees, and that's one of the things that I admit it, growing up, you think, just feel how your glands are. Oh, yeah, I feel fine. Everything's good. It's just right here. But then when you actually look at a schematic of the lymph system, it's like a road map, just like the circulatory system.
Right.
And it's crazy to see how many.
Everywhere in your body.
Yeah, it's really cool.
So another issue that can happen with lymph is if people have surgery. Okay? So most typical one is for women who have breast cancer surgery.
Okay.
Quite often, if people get cancer in their breast tissue, it'll spread to the lymph nodes that are underneath their armpits. And so the surgeon will remove those lymph nodes so that the cancer doesn't continue to spread.
Right.
Okay? But what happens then is the lymph that drains to those nodes from the person's arm, because the lymph drains from your arm up to those nodes under your armpit, your arm can get very swollen with lymph, very, very painful, and it can be debilitating where you can't function anymore at what your job profession was. Very hard to make your way around the kitchen, make your way around the keyboard at the office, that kind of thing.
Because your arm's all swollen from the
Very swollen.
Liquid
Yep.
in that. Well, we were talking about. Yeah, it was right. I was right. It's 17 liters that it pushes out. Sorry, and that's a lot of stuff. And if you take out one of the main things that gets it out of here, you're gonna have a swollen arm, and you're gonna have pain and inflammation. I would assume.
In some women, both their arms get swollen if they've had double mastectomies and lymph vessels taken from both. Okay, and so what people can do about that, which is good news, because the lymph system has its own genesis to it, just as people have neurogenesis, where we create new brain cells.
Yeah, we talked about that on one of our previous podcasts.
Yeah, and so your lymph system also has the capability to create new vessels that will move around spots. And so one of the things that a therapist can do, a lymph drainage therapist can do with a person with the axillary nodes removed, is they can move that lymph with their hands and bring it up to around their back. There's a section called the back chain, and you can train that lymph to train not to the axillaries but around to the back chain and then come back down into the thoracic duct before it dumps back into the blood.
Right.
Okay.
Right
And so I've worked on people before that had that issue, and through patience and energy and focus and massage over time, 7, 8, 9, 10 hour long sessions, that those vessels will form and the swelling will go away and the person can go back to full functioning.
So you're like rerouting the system because you don't have it.
And by coaxing it, the lymph system will begin to redirect it to a different spot. So
now, it's important, you said, I don't know if most people realize this, but a lot of times when you rub your arms, it feels good to rub down, because your muscles.
Right.
But when you're talking about the lymph, because you're saying it goes to the heart, you were telling me you want to make sure you rub up. Always rub up. Right. And that's even if you're working, say, on your legs, you rub up towards your chest, right?
Unless you're dealing with your neck and face, in which case it's going down. Then it would
be down, right?
Like this. Because remember, the lymph is going back into your heart.
Here.
So you have to coax it to get to your heart, and you have to coax it to come down from your face.
Right.
Okay. And what we've also seen sometimes before is different types of surgery, a C-section, or someone getting a tummy tuck, or liposuction.
Right, in this area.
Right, can create a blockage. Some of the vessels can get cut during surgery, and so you can get pooling of lymph. And so similarly to the mastectomy, if you help with massage, it'll reroute the lymph, and you can return the person back to their normal structure and function.
Wow, man.
Okay?
Yeah, that's.
And so these are for people that go to become lymph drainage therapists. These are the types of things that they learn. There are other more serious issues regarding lymph, congenital deformities that can occur before birth.
Okay.
And they require more intensive intervention from a surgeon, a medical doctor who is skilled in various different types of techniques that can mitigate these deformities.
Okay, yeah, you probably couldn't, if it was a congenital thing, that's not something you could just rub out or reroute.
No, absolutely not. Okay. And so what we want to do to maintain the health of our lymph system is, number one, make sure you stay hydrated.
Right.
Because we're dealing with water here.
Lots of water.
Yep.
17 liters of fluid. Sorry.
So the other is exercise. Right. So the more you exercise, the more those muscles that are alongside the lymph vessels will help with the movement of the lymph.
The flow, because there's no pump. Right. So you got to move.
You also want to avoid toxins, because your lymph is helping to move toxins out of your body.
Of course.
And so we have a whole separate podcast on toxins and how to avoid toxins.
Yes.
That you can find. And you also want to avoid inflammation.
Yes.
Right? Because you don't want generalized inflammation in your body, because it can be damaging your whole body, including your lymph system. Your vessels and nodes don't like excess inflammation.
No.
They're already dealing with bacteria that create inflammation. And so another podcast on inflammation you can watch that will help with that. And then lastly, manual lymph drainage. So every person can learn to do lymph drainage for themselves, which isn't really drainage, so to speak, but it's coaxing the lymph system along to move better and faster.
Now, you were telling me real quick that sometimes when the lymph, where the actual decontamination of the system is going down and the node happens, you were telling me sometimes that can get overwhelmed. Even in people that haven't had like surgeries or haven't had issues with where it needs to be rerouted, just in a regular working system, a given node can get overwhelmed, and so that the manual lymph drainage is a good way to.
If a node gets overwhelmed and gets plugged, and instead of moving the fluid along to the next node so it can do its job, it's creating a blockage, right? And
so you can't.
But very light, simple massage can help release that node.
Okay.
So it'll keep on going.
Okay.
And we're going to have a video people can watch on manual lymphatic drainage. They'll show the sequence and the pressure that people can use.
Okay, cool.
And it's a very easy to learn, but highly effective technique.
Yeah, we actually are going to be doing, right, make sure you check it out when you're done with this video. We're going to have on our YouTube channel, we will have a link to our new Manual Lymphatic Drainage video. We have an older one, but we're going to be redoing it. And make sure you check it out, because it's not just something that we want you to watch, but it's something you can use. We talk about giving people tools to keep their health, you know, at the optimal level. This is another tool that you can use, and sometimes you don't realize that some of the things that are going on are because you're experiencing one of these blockages. I've talked to a lot of people before that, like I've mentioned, a lot of people, they don't really realize the extent of the system, and then once they use this, it really makes a difference. So check it out. I mean, really.
Yeah, and so I think that's about it for the overview of the lymph system. Rollie, thanks for being here with us, and thanks everybody
Always.
for listening and watching Live Forever Young Radio.
Thanks for listening to Live Forever Young Radio. Check us out at liveforeveryoungradio.com.